On 11 August 2026, the government provided guidance on social work post-qualifying standard in a knowledge and skill statement for England and Wales. The background to the guidance states that until 31st March 2027, the local authorities are to use this knowledge and skill statements for child and family practitioners. From 1 April 2027, they are to use the Child and Family Social Work Early Career Standards. From September 2027, the Early Career Development Program based on the Early Career Standards will replace the assessed and supported year in employment. A child and family social worker should be able to do the following. Number 1, relationships and effective direct work. Build effective relationships with children, young people, and families, which form the bedrock of all support and child protection responses. Be both authoritative and empathic, and work in partnership with children, families, and professionals, enabling full participation in assessment, planning, review, and decision-making, and to ensure child protection is always privileged. Provide support based on best evidence, which is tailored to meet individual child and family needs and which addresses relevant and significant risks. Secure access to services, negotiating and challenging other professionals and organizations to provide the help required. Social workers are to ensure children and families, including children in public care, receive the support to which they are entitled. In transition, including children and young people who are moving to and between placements, returning home, or being adopted, or moving through to independence. A social worker is to help children to separate from and sustain multiple relationships, recognizing the impact of loss and change. Number 2, communications. Communicate clearly and sensitively. Communicate with children of different ages and abilities. Communicate with their families. Communicate in a range of settings and circumstances. A social worker is to use methods based on best evidence. Create an immediate rapport with people not previously known that facilitates engagement and motivation to participate in child protection inquiries, assessments, services. A social worker is to act respectfully even when people are angry, hostile, and resistant to change. Manage tensions between parents, carers, and family members in ways that shows persistence, determination, professional confidence. A social worker is to listen to the views, wishes, and feelings of children and families, and help parents and carers understand the way in which their children communicate through their behavior. Help them to understand how they might communicate more effectively with their children. Promote speech, language, and communication support, identifying those children and adults who are experiencing difficulties expressing themselves. A social worker is expected to produce written case notes and reports that are well argued, focused, and jargon-free. A social worker is to present a clear analysis and a sound rationale for actions, as well as any conclusions reached, so that all parties are well informed. Number 3, child development. A social worker is to observe and talk to children in their environment, including at home and at school and with parents, carers, friends, and peers, to help understand the physical and emotional world in which the child lives, including the quality of child and parents or carers' interaction and other key relationships. A social worker is to establish the pattern of development for the child, promote optimal child development, and be alert to signs that may indicate that the child is A. Not meeting key development milestones, B. Has not been harmed, and C. Is at risk of harm. A social worker is to take account of typical age-related physical, cognitive, social, emotional, and behavioral development over time, accepting that normative developmental tasks are different for each child, depending on the interactions for that child between health, environmental, and genetic factors. A social worker must be able to assess the influence of cultural and social factors on child development, the effect of different parenting styles, loss, change, and uncertainty in the development of resilience. A social worker must be able to explore the extent to which behavioral and emotional development may also be a result of communication difficulties, ill health, or disability, adjusting practice to take account of these differences. Seek further advice from relevant professionals to fully understand a child's development and behavior. Number 4, adult mental ill health, substance misuse, domestic abuse, physical ill health, and disability. Under this heading, a social worker must identify the impact of adult mental ill health, substance misuse, domestic abuse, physical ill health, and disability on family functioning and social circumstances, and, in particular, the effect on children, including those who are young carers. A social worker is expected to access the help and assistance of other professionals in the identification and prevention of adult social need and risks, including mental health and learning disability assessments. A social worker is expected to coordinate emergency and routine services and synthesize multidisciplinary judgments as part of ongoing social work assessments. Use a range of strategies to help families facing these difficulties. A social worker is expected to identify concerning adult behaviors that may indicate risk or increasing risk to children. Assess the likely impact on and interrelationship between parenting and child development. Recognize and act on escalating social needs and risks, helping to ensure that vulnerable adults are safeguarded. A child is protected. The child's best interests are always prioritized. Number 5, abuse and neglect of children. A social worker is expected to exchange information with partner agencies about children and adults where there is concern about the safety and welfare of children. Triangulate evidence to ensure robust conclusions are drawn. A social worker is expected to recognize harm and the risk indicators of different forms of harm to children relating to sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. A social worker is expected to take into account the long-term effects of cumulative harm, particularly in relation to early indicators of neglect. A social worker is expected to consider the possibility of child sexual exploitation, grooming, and this could be online and offline, female genital mutilation, enforced marriage, the range of adult behaviors that pose a risk to children. A social worker is expected to recognize too the potential for children to be perpetrators of abuse. A social worker is expected to lead the investigation of allegations of significant harm to children in consultation with other professionals and practice supervisors. Draw one's own conclusions about the likelihood of, for example, sexual abuse or non-accidental injury having occurred and the extent to which an injury is consistent with the explanation offered. Commission a second professional opinion and take legal advice where necessary. 6. Child and family assessments. A social worker is expected to carry out in-depth and ongoing family assessments of social needs and risks to children, with particular emphasis on parental capacity and capability to change. A social worker is expected to use professional curiosity and authority while maintaining a position of partnership involving all key family members, including fathers. Acknowledge any conflict between parents and children's interest, prioritizing the protection of children as set out in legislation. A social worker is expected to use child observation skills, genograms, echo maps, chronologies, and other evidence-based tools. A social worker is expected to ensure active child and family participation in the process, incorporate the contributions that other professionals make to social work assessments. A social worker is expected to hold an empathic position about difficult social circumstances experienced by children and families, taking account of the relationship between poverty and social deprivation and the effect of stress on family functioning, providing help and support. Take into account individual child and family history and how this might affect the ability of adults and children to engage with services. A social worker is expected to recognize and address behavior that may indicate resistance to change, ambivalent or selective cooperation with services, and to recognize when there is a need for immediate action and what other steps can be taken to protect children. Number 7, analysis, decision-making, planning and review. A social worker is expected to establish the seriousness that different risks present and any harm already suffered by a child, balance with family strengths and potential solutions, set out the best option for resolving the difficulties facing the family and each child, considering the risk of future harm and its consequences and the likelihood of successful change. A social worker is expected to prioritize children's need for emotional warmth, stability, and sense of belonging, particularly those in public care, as well as identify development, health, and education, ensuring the active participation and positive engagement of the child and family. Test multiple hypotheses about what is happening in families and to children, using evidence and professional judgment to reach timely conclusions. Challenge any prevailing professional conclusions in the light of new evidence or practice reflection. A social worker is expected to make realistic, child-centered plans within a review timeline that will manage and reduce identified risks, meet the needs of the child. A social worker is expected to ensure sufficient multidisciplinary input into the process at all stages. Apply twin and triple tracking planning to minimize chances of drift or delay, being alert to the effectiveness or otherwise of current support plans. Number 8, the law and the family and youth service system. A social worker is expected to navigate the family and youth justice system in England, using legal powers and duties to support families, protect children, look after children in the public care system. This includes the regulatory framework that supports the full range of permanence options. A social worker is expected to participate in decisions about 1. Whether to make an application to the family court, what order to be applied for, and 3. The relationship and presentation of evidence. A social worker is expected to seek advice and a second opinion as required in relation to the wide range of legal issues that frequently face children and families involved with statutory services, including immigration, housing, welfare benefits, mental health and learning disability assessments, education and support for children with learning difficulties. A social worker must be able to use the law and regulatory and statutory guidance to inform practice decisions, take into account the complex relationships between professional ethics, the application of the law, and the impact of social policy on both. Number 9, the role of supervision. It is expected of a social worker to recognize one's own professional limitations and how it is expected for a social worker to recognize one's own professional limitation and how and when to seek advice from a range of sources, including practice supervisors, senior practice leaders, other clinical practitioners from a range of disciplines such as psychiatry, pediatrics, psychology. A social worker is to be able to discuss, debate, reflect, and test hypotheses about what is happening within families and with children. Explore the potential for bias in decision making and resolve tensions emerging from, for example, ethical dilemmas, conflicting information, differing professional positions. It is expected for a social worker to be able to identify which method will be of help for a specific child or family and the limitation of different approaches. Make use of best evidence from research to inform the complex judgments and decisions needed to support families and protect children. Reflect on the emotional experiences of working relationships with parents, carers, and children, and consciously identify where potential triggers are affecting the quality of analysis or help. Identify strategies to build professional resilience and management of self. Number 10, organizational context. It is expected of a social worker to be able to operate successfully in a wide range of organizational context, complying with checks and balances within local and national systems that are a condition of employment. Maintain personal and professional credibility through effective working relationship with peers, managers, and leaders, both within the professional and throughout multi-agency partnerships and public bodies, including the family courts. A social worker is expected to act in ways that protect the reputation of the employer organization and the social work professional, while always privileging the best interests of children. Manage the specific set of organizational tasks relating to lead responsibility for children with the support of an appropriate qualified supervisor, and the use of multi-agency support network. A social worker is expected to contribute to the organization's role as corporate parents to children in public care, encouraging and advocating for organizational focus, resource, and support so that children and young people can thrive and enjoy their childhood and move into independence with confidence in and ambition for their future.